Hey everyone, here we go. Another weekly Parawing Q&A session. I'm not at home, I'm overseas this time, so maybe you're watching this at a different time frame. But before we get started with the questions, I just wanted to let you all know that the latest episode of the Lab Rat Foiler podcast has dropped on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. The Lab Rat Foiler podcast is all about parawinging. So we interview Felipe Hezanja this time around, and he's the founder of Flow and created the D-Wing. And it was an amazing chat with him. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. We talk everything about his journey in sports, how he started Flow paragliders and then started foiling and wanted to learn how to downwind, had some struggles with it, saw the BRM and said I could do something like that. And then he created the D-Wing, which was awesome. So go and check that out. I'm going to start with the questions here. So we have a question from Odd Budwing. I hope I'm not hacking that name. Using a large downwind board around 40 liters above your weight, do you think it's doable to just sail a Parawing off the foil for some time instead of just foiling it? So I didn't quite understand that question, and I asked her to get into a little bit more detail. So basically what she's saying is, can you go out on a Parawing and just hold it in your hand and be on top of the board and maybe just have it planing but not get on foil? You absolutely could do it. I think she's just saying that sometimes where I live, the wind can drop and it's really patchy, but any time on water is progress. So I agree with that. Look, if you're still learning how to use your Parawing, if you're still at a very early stage where you would find it beneficial to work on your balance on the board, absolutely. I'm from the mindset that, like, if I want to learn something, and I did this with downwinding with the paddle, I went out every day in the water, no matter the condition. If it was no wind, I would do flat water paddle ups. If it was 10, 12 knots, I would try to get on some bumps and, try to go downwind. And if it was nuking, once you spend some time in the water, you will be better on that day that conditions are good. So absolutely, like, get out there, get acquainted with water relaunches. And if it's not even good to get out on a board, maybe just spend a lot of time with it on land. I think people underestimate the power of doing the land drills, doing proper land drills, picking the Parawing up, putting it down, doing that on both sides, doing figure eights, walking on the land, and then walking downwind and trying to simulate a jibe. Do all of those drills, and then when conditions are good, you will be much better for it. So absolutely. So question here from Ilupo 4279. Question: I think I heard you talk about a non-coiled board leash. Is that right? Which board leash do you use? Which length? Is it fixed to one of your ankles or to the hip belts? Regards, Wolfgang from Austria. Okay, cool. So I started with the normal wing leash, which is that big coiled leash from the waist to the board. Like, horrible leash for parawinging. Absolutely dreadful. The lines will get caught in that coil all the time. I moved then to the Invisileash that I use for downwinding with the paddle. It has just a stretch, like no coil, but then it has a small section with a coil, and still I found that it would get caught on that. So then I used a normal surfboard leash from the board to my waist. It was all right, but I felt that you need the stretch in the leash so it's not too long, and then it starts wrapping around the board, especially if you're in a downwinder board with a lot of tail. You'll notice that it'll wrap around. So then I ended up, and I'll bring it up here for you to have a look. I ended up going on Amazon and I found a leash that is a kayak leash. Let me flip this thing around. And this is what I'm using today. Ocean board kayak paddle leash. This is $15, and it stretches from 5 to 7 feet. Okay. I took this carabiner out. I put a proper stainless steel carabiner on it, and I basically just connect it to the board, and then I have a carabiner that I then snap that carabiner onto my waist belt if I'm using a belt that day with a Parawing or not, or just the waist leash. So I do like the waist leash, but I can't use anything with a coil because it's absolutely dreadful for Parawinging. Your Parawing, if you have like a little earring, if you have a little bump, your lines will get caught on it. Trust me, it's worth to be as clean as you can be. Cool. David Faig, what kind of harness line is recommended? I've seen elastic and static lines. I use normally static lines with the wing, and I'm wondering what's the advantage of an elastic harness line. Also, is anyone making a sling type Parawing bag where the strap in the bag would go across your chest? Okay, I've seen those. You could pack it and then rotate the sling onto your back and it's out of the way. Yeah. So a couple of things in this question. When I started using the harness line, I used a 4mm Dyneema static, and it was fine. I think the static line was really good. I've seen people with elastic lines, and I think all that does is it gives you a little bit of give. But at the same time, I think for me, the static line was a little bit better because I like to know exactly the distance of the harness to my hand, and I don't like to have a variable distance in that. I like to always be in that same position. So I use a static line. I think the elastic line would give you a little bit more relief from gusts. So if it's a gusty day and it's really pumping, the little bit of elasticity will give you a little bit more forgiveness on your harness. Now, the one thing that I saw was cool is if you have the Dyneema line and you put a plastic sheath on top of that, you're able to have the hook with the plastic sheath and the line goes through that sheath. And then you're able to rotate the bar very easily because the line is going through the plastic sheath out the other way. And all that's touching the hook is the plastic. So the line runs freely in the sheath and it won't like start, degrading the line and all that thing with the harness line. So that was something I didn't use, but I've seen it on the beach and I thought it was a really good idea. And then the second part of the question, the bag with the chest strap. Yes, I've seen, and Dmitry Evsev, I'm not quite sure if I'm pronouncing his name right. I've seen him with that, and I separated a little clip for you to see. So you probably have seen Dmitry. He's absolutely killing it on the Parawing as well, and he uses this kind of messenger bag style bag to stash the Parawing, and then as you can see here on the video, he's putting the Parawing into the pouch. And then once he's put everything in there, he zips it up and then he flips it to his back. And I believe that's what you're saying. So, and he even has this little bit of a line there to keep it in place. So not quite sure what brand this is, but if you want more information about this bag, maybe shoot a message. This is his Instagram handle, Dmitry Evsev. Sorry, mate, if I'm butchering that name. But yes, this is the closest thing that I've seen to that style of bag that you're mentioning here in your question. Then the last question we have here before we go into this one, let me see if anyone's online. Matt on Foil, do you buy the Parawings now or do you get them sent to you? God, I wish I had them sent to me, mate. I'm still buying all my Parawings, and I have the 2.5 and the 3.7 from Flow coming my way, so I'm really excited about that. But if any brand wants to send me some Parawings, by all means, send them to me. I would love that. Question from Jacob Matan. How much pumping on a Parawing are people doing? I understand most of the pumping is with the board, but I was wondering how effective pumping the Parawing is. The Parawing is a great question. I have the Flow D-Wing 4.2 meter, and I'm finding very easy to get going on the 8 feet downwind board. I would like to swap down to my mid-length, and I'm wondering if I can get more low end out of the Parawing by pumping it. I'm only about 7 sessions in so far. I've had best results from keeping the Parawing steady and let it build speed in apparent wind and pump the board. So doing more leg work than Parawing pumping. When I do pump the Parawing, it seems to disturb the airflow, and I have a negative effect on building speed. I know they don't pump like a wing, but I'm just wondering how pumping helps with Parawinging. Pumping the Parawing is a thanks, Matt. Thanks for the little message there, bro. So pumping the Parawing is a great question, because I believe that it really depends on what Parawing you own. So when I used the BRMs, they really did not pump that well. And I think also the smaller the Parawing you go, the harder it is to get a good pump out of them. The bigger Parawing you use, the more pump you have, because those things are just like trucks. They just want to keep flying. So the 4.2 flow definitely pumps, and it pumps great. So when I'm thinking about pumping the Parawing, think about getting up on the Parawing in a few steps, right? Step 1 is from like 10 to 20% power on your legs, power on the Parawing, and all you want to do is start moving in the water. So you're doing very small, literally this, and you're doing very small pumps with your legs. And all you're doing is you're looking down, and every little bit of chop that comes your way, you want to read it. You know, everything like a little skate pump track, right? And you start gaining speed that way, right? So you're doing a little bit of this, a little bit of pumping. From 20 to maybe like 40 or 50%, you can feel a little bit of pull on the Parawing. Maybe a gust came through or something like that. And you can actually feel a little bit of pressure when you pump the Parawing in. But again, you're going from something like this to then pumping like very minimal, right? So what you said there about if you pump the Parawing, you lose efficiency is completely true. And that happens when you go from like 10% to 80% pumping, right? You have to go through those stages of building speed. So from 1 to 10%, 10 to 40, and notice that what's happening in the water, and you continue to read the bumps. From 40 to then 80, you increase that cadence, you increase the pressure you're putting on the board, and you can feel that Parawing still, producing power and harnessing that power. You can keep going. And then when you get out of the water and you disconnect, that is the moment for you to be very precise with the pump, because if you do that pumping well in that moment that you're out of the water and you disconnect, then you can start like in a couple of pumps, you're up and going. It really takes a lot of time, and you're with a downwinder board as well. So you can definitely relate to what I'm saying, because you start building up speed slowly. And then you get to the point where you disconnect. And I think about pumping when I pull in, I'm already in the top of my pumping on that amplitude, and I'm going down. So I'm pulling because I want to get speed going down. And once I do that, I try to unload. And when I unload, everything unloads. I'm unloading my weight from the board. I'm trying to get as light as I can on the board. The Parawing goes back out. And the motion of pumping, if you're looking from the top, it's not just like that. You want to bring the Parawing from the front of the window to the back, and then shoot it forward again. Shoot it to the front of the window so you can pull it back. So if you just do this, it will be a little bit harder for the Parawing to continue to fly, because you're just pushing it out. But if you pull it in and then you pull it out, you have a lot more range to pull it back in, right? But again, this is small. It starts small and you start going to bigger circles to the point where you're out of the water, then you can give those last few pumps, and then hopefully you start riding. But look, my pumping technique is also evolving. My pumping technique kind of changes. I looked at a video the other day of what I was doing, and I was just trying to see what if I was going up or down on the pump when I was pulling in the bar. So, and it depends on the little swell that's coming in. Is you going towards the swell? You're going against the swell? But see what works. I like this motion, this kind of circular motion for the pump. So you can grab it on the edge of the window. You can bring it back in, and then you bring it out to the edge of the window, not just front and back like that. I hope that helps a little bit. And as my pumping technique gets better, I'll continue to post some stuff. Kiting Puerto Rico, yay! We have a podcast with Dylan coming out soon, and yeah, it'll be sick. We spoke for I think an hour and 40 minutes, so yeah, definitely get your popcorn out for that one. It's a long one, but there's some gems in there. All right, Matt on foil again. I was out with the Ences in 30 to 35 knots. It was pretty hard. Is there a technical thing one can do in strong wind? Yeah, there is like some stuff that you can do to your gear. Unfortunately, the Ences, is that what you're riding? Which one? What Parawing are you riding, Matt? If you can ride it there. Oh, you do. You're riding the Ences. Sorry, I just saw it. Yeah, so with the Ences, the one thing that's hard about the Ences is that the middle lines, they go through the bar, and they have that little safety feature. But when I'm with a Parawing that has just the webbings on the bar, let's say, the bar is here and the webbing's in the middle of the bar, you can always put that anchor point down. So if you get that webbing that's right in the middle of the bar and you bring it to the bottom of the bar, essentially what you're doing is you're allowing the Parawing to have as much D-power as it can handle, right? You're bringing the anchor point a little bit further down in the bar. You're going to feel the bar different. In fact, today I probably have that attachment point maybe 2 or 3 centimeters down from the center point towards the brake lines, just because I feel the bar on the flow is a little bit more balanced. Otherwise, I feel I have to have my hands right at the top of the bar, sometimes into the lines if it's really overpowered. So I try bringing that point down. Unfortunately, you can't do that on the Ences, so I'm not quite sure if there's any technical thing that you can do on the Ences to maybe depower it. But technically, with the BRM, the Ences, those Parawings, they require a little bit more technique in your riding for you to harness it. So, and this comes from like 2-line kites, right? So 2-line kites, that era was absolutely insane, because if a gust came through, you would collect all that power and you weren't able to sheet the bar off and have the kite, not collect that wind. And the Parawing is very much like that. It's a little bit tough to unsheet and do that motion. So what I would suggest is for you to really work on your posture. And what you want to do is you want to hold as much pressure as you can on the foil. And you're going to be pretty loaded up on that, on the BRM, on the Ences. Like, you need to harness that power really well. A harness line might help you. A lot of people feel that it's easier to lean on the Parawing when they have a harness line on them. But the Ences Roger, unfortunately, it doesn't allow you to put those middle lines back. And that is something that helps tremendously if you're overpowered. I took the 3-meter flow on a day that it was pretty gusty, and it was from 25 to like 40 knots. It was an insane day. And those gusts were coming through like at 35 plus knots. And then I would pull that bit all the way to the bottom. And what happens is like two-thirds of the Parawing was in the wind, and the last little bit was just flapping like crazy. But essentially, that's just not harnessing power. It's not a great way to ride. Obviously, that's not how you want to ride the Parawing, but it'll allow you to have a little bit of a breather and survive those really crazy gusts that come in, right? tie up your board shorts and hold on. Kiting Puerto Rico has some good ideas there. All right, look, if there's no more questions, that's awesome. I'm overseas at the moment, but I still wanted to get this out to you guys. If you haven't seen the last podcast, go check it out with Felipe from Flow. It was absolutely sick, and we have Kiting Puerto Rico, Dylan, coming on for a very long chat. We talk about so much stuff in that one, just preempting that it is like an hour and 40 minutes. But we talk about safety, we talk about technique, we talk about all the Parawings. Dylan has tried the North, the Ences, the BRM, the Flow. What else? I'm missing some as well, but you'll watch the episode because he has really good insight on what's coming on with all the North development as well. So thanks for joining. Send your questions through the Facebook group or just DM me any questions, and we'll catch you next week for another one. Catch you all.